episode of the Startup Junkies podcast. Thanks for tuning in from wherever you're tuning in, however you're tuning in. We appreciate you. My name is Caleb. I am a proud member of the Startup Junkie team, joined by my co-hosts, Victoria and Jeff. How's it going?
Going great. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. We are, if you can't tell, we are on location today at Loloft in Rogers, and we are joined by our friend and Loloft founder, Brendan Howell. How's it going, Brendan?
Marvelous. Thanks for joining us here, guys. It's a pleasure to be our host, finally.
Absolutely.
At a live location.
Well, listeners of the podcast may recognize Brendan from a past episode that we shot at the office or studios, excuse me, in the past. But we're excited to be here on location. Brendan, tell us about Loloft. It's been a couple of years in the making. How's it feel?
Yeah, I mean, it feels good to be live. We opened the doors officially the 1st of September. And we're just over 30% full, which is, our target was 13% for this month. So in the first 2 weeks, we surpassed that target. And our target for the end of October is 27%. So we've actually, in the first 2 weeks, we've blown out the first 2 months target. So that's a good feeling.
Yeah, that's awesome. And what's the mix? What's the mix of tenants just in general? Is it what you expected, or is it a little different?
No, it's not what we expected at all. We thought we'd mainly attract small e-commerce companies, but we're finding there's all sorts of different use cases. We really, we're positioning ourselves as a platform, and that's really starting to show up. So, we've got L-Tangle in here that does the bicycle clamps, local startup. They were working from home. They tried 3PL, but it didn't work for them, so they came into us. So that's a nice sort of use case about smaller companies going to 3PL when it's, they may be too small, they don't fully understand their business, and even like their packaging needs, because 3PL, you have to be very savvy about, the size of the boxes that things are sent out in, or else you pay, excess shipping costs. And for a small company, it's hard to get their attention if you're doing a handful of packages when they've got large companies doing massive volume. We've got TrueRoop in here, an app developer. So some local guys, young guys. They actually got their first check last week. The guys came to me like twice, and one day was like, "Have you checked the mail? Have you checked the mail?" Like, yeah.
That's awesome.
Are you expecting something? And then we got the check, and we took a photo up at the sign out the front.
Awesome.
So
That's pretty awesome.
it's just cool to share those little wins with the members.
And that's a group that you would typically have expected would be in sort of a regular, sort of conventional co-working versus with the interesting mix of stuff that you have here.
Yeah. So, part of the reason we thought we'd put some offices in is we thought that some of the warehouse members may want office space. But we're finding that most of the people that have warehouse space just put a desk in there and kind of run their operation from inside there. And like we're getting other people just want office space in this part of town because there's really nothing, and for the sort of quality we're offering, the ledger's at the top, and we're probably like the next in the pecking order for the quality of finish. And there's really not much around this area.
So talk a little bit about Loloft as a micro warehouse and co-working space. I mean, if our listeners are not necessarily able to a place where they're able to watch, they're just listening, describe what Loloft is, describe the building that we're in.
So the best way to describe Loloft is like office co-working combined with warehousing. So it's really a kind of mix of the two concepts. And we coined the term industrial co-working to try and accurately describe what we're doing. So the front 10 to 15% of this location looks like a traditional office co-working environment. We've got reception, we've got the conference room like we're sitting in now. Well, this is the conference room we're sitting in now. We've got, common areas to hang out, like the island up top there in the kitchen. You can actually sit around it and do your work. We've got hot desks, and then we've got private offices. So there's kind of, we try and cater to a number of different audiences. And then the micro warehouses, it's kind of like, the easiest way to describe it's probably like a storage unit kind of esque space, but they're much nicer. We've got wide hallways. They've all got glass double doors on them. bigger units have 8 foot by 8 foot doors, the smaller ones 8 foot by 6 foot, beautiful glass doors. And you can frost them out if you want privacy, but you can get forklifts into every single unit. So we designed it with logistics in mind. So where you're kind of restricted with a storage space, and they've got narrow hallways, you're not really supposed to be working in there. If they find you working in there, you'll generally get the boot. We've got full height loading dock, so we can take 53-foot trucks in. We've got drive-in access, so you can drive your car up or your van for loading. Daily carrier pickups, so UPS, USPS, DHL and FedEx turn up every day. So if you've got an operation in here, do your own pick and pack, put it in the bins, and then everyday automatic pickups. We have a community lead at the front to run the location, so if you have any needs, and just make sure the place is clean and tidy and secure. And then we have a warehouse manager, so we actually have someone running the back of house. So if you're a company that has space, you receive a shipment, even if you're not here, we'll receive it for you, and we can put it in your unit. So we take a lot of the bottlenecks out of logistics that small companies experience, or larger companies that have a remote footprint. And we've actually got, like as an example, we've got Lifetime Fitness in here. So they do the Big Sugar and Little Sugar bicycle event, the gravel events. So they've got all their equipment for the event space, or for their events in the space. Yeah, and like they're remote, so they're not here. So we receive, like we've got a pallet yesterday for them, so we'll put the pallet in the unit for them. And it's just it's a service that's very difficult to get anywhere else.
It's certainly not something you get in a typical storage facility. You wouldn't get any of that.
No. I mean, the name of the game with storage facilities is sort of, less than one person, running a storage facility. So they're kind of using technology to try and make sure they can have one person running multiple locations. So you just don't have that level of service that we provide.
Very cool.
And you mentioned kind of, once they receive that check, taking the picture out here, get the sense that there is kind of this organic sense of community, but I know that was something y'all had in mind from the front end. Like y'all wanted to establish a level of community within the facility. Kind of walk us through some of that. Yeah,
well, my journey that led me to Northwest Arkansas was I came from New Zealand.
You're not from Arkansas?
No, I'm actually from Alabama, as you can tell by my accent.
I would have guessed Northern Florida.
Same difference.
So I came from New Zealand to San Francisco in 2016. I spent a year and a bit in San Francisco. And when I landed there, I landed in a place called Rocket Space. And that was a curated community of early stage companies. And it wasn't an incubator, but it was the closest thing you could get. So you actually had to apply to go in there. You had to have a certain amount of funding, and the business had to be progressing. And then we got accepted, so we moved in. And one of the reasons I chose that place is because Uber started there, Spotify, Hootsuite, Supercell. They had 18 unicorns go through the place. And so I kind of, just hoped a bit of the magic dust would rub off. And it actually did. That's how we ended up doing business with the 49ers. So just being in that environment, the guy sitting opposite me was going to a draft party at Levi Stadium. He told the team about us. Then a week later, we're out there messing around on the video boards with that application and doing product development with those guys. So that was one benefit I saw. The other one was the sense of community. Like on a Thursday, we'd have beer and ping pong, and sometimes some pizza. And the startups would just kind of hang out and socialize. It started doing business between each other. So we did some business with a development house there. That was a small company. It's now turned into Builder.ai, which I think they raised a massive round, like 50 million or something. So, and other people have moved into senior roles at other companies. So I've kept in touch with a lot of those folks. They used to get big companies down, like Hotels Tonight came down, the C-suite, just did a talk one night. Wilson Sonsini would come in, the law firm, and just give us guidance on capital raising. And they're our lawyers now. They also invested in the company. So it was really eye-opening to see the access you can get by being in a community that is actually trying to build community and trying to build connections. So companies can come in and just do their own thing in here, but if they want to participate, there's the option as well. Like, we want to make sure we run events to connect the companies in here with the brands that are in the neighborhood, because I think there's a lot of opportunity for collaboration and even doing business or running pilots, but also education. Happy to host you guys down here if you want to do some events. I think it'd just be cool to help. We really want to be part of this ecosystem. We're really kind of pushing on that, and we've got a venue for it, so we want to lean into creating content and events to get people engaged.
We found over, I've seen that if you give I guess the entrepreneurial ecosystem, the community, the space to do it, both physically and hypothetically, theoretically, good things happen. It feels like something's bound to happen from that.
Yeah, and you get those little sort of we call them happy collisions, where people just talk to each other in the kitchen, or just run into each other in the hallway. So there's those kind of things don't happen unless you're in the same environment.
That's true.
Yeah.
What now that you've got this going, you're making good progress getting it filled up. I know you've got much bigger plans than just one location in one city. What comes next?
So we've got a pipeline of locations. We've got another 7 locations in various stages of development. Some of them from sort of early contract stage, other ones planning. Phoenix will probably most likely be our next build. Miami's been sort of in the works for a little while now. There's the owners of that property have to sell a property next door to free up the capital for our project. It's a $1.2 billion land transaction. So I think it's the biggest one in Miami. So we're just waiting on that. But yeah, we basically want to expand across the country as quickly as we can. And so the next handful of locations will be leases, but we've already got the wheels in motion to run an OpCo/PropCo model. So we're more interested in purchasing locations under a PropCo, because we found we can actually move quicker buying the locations instead of leasing. Because leasing's it's a bizarre model. Like, they're all the same, but they're all different. The lease here is 31 pages. The Phoenix one's 45. The Miami one's 66. Essentially it's the same thing. We'll use your space and we'll pay you for it.
Right.
But it gets complicated. So I think that model is a little bit broken, I think. We solve for that with our members, but we've got to deal with that up front ourselves. So that is a challenge, a growth challenge, trying to standardize the agreements so we don't have to negotiate every single property. It's pretty hard to achieve scale that way.
On the PropCo model, that obviously gives you exposure to the ups and downs in commercial real estate, and there's a lot of prognostication right now about that commercial real estate not being a great place to be in. Now, I personally think that's for maybe Class A office space, with the assumption you're going to have everybody in every seat, which is probably not true going into the future. But what's your take on where commercial real estate is going, and why do you think making that transition would make good sense where you actually own some of the property?
Yeah, I think commercial real estate's a disaster right now, which is great for us. Because there's so many properties, there's so many properties in our pipeline, so we can get access to value add deals that we probably wouldn't have got access to 2 years ago. And we're reasonably asset class agnostic. Like, this is a warehouse that we're in now. We converted an old factory. It was quite a heavy lift, but the Phoenix location is a suburban office. So we're converting an office into our model. So it's a great use case. And, we've done a retail conversion before as well. So, we're familiar with that. And yeah, we just see it as a great opportunity for us to expand rapidly. Because with any business, timing is everything.
Sure.
And we just got lucky with our timing.
So you talked about community being important for this space and doing that with intention by planning events. Last year, you guys partnered with us and put on the Christmas market at your other location, downtown Rogers. How do you keep the same goals across all these locations that are soon going to be opening, knowing that you can't physically be at all locations at the same time? So what's your model for making sure that the same standard of community and, membership is consistent across the board?
So the key for us is creating that structure and that culture from a head office perspective or head office level, and then making sure we drive that into every location. So each location's got its own team running the operations on the ground. So it's a matter of building that out, communicating to the team on the ground, this is what's required, this is what's expected. And then every role has a scorecard against it. And so that's one of the dimensions that we measure for each location and for the role that's responsible for that, which is the community lead. So they're scored on that to make sure they're actually delivering those.
Very cool.
For those listening or watching that didn't watch the previous episode, and you've spoken about being from New Zealand and having kind of come through San Francisco. Tell us about how you got to Arkansas and where, kind of a little more of the origin story of Loloft, how that came to be in general, what led you to from previous venture to this one.
Yeah, well, I was actually driving from Miami to New York and I ran out of gas.
I was going to say there's got to be an Interpol angle to this, right? Interpol or FBI witness protection.
Well, my real name. So origin story. So I went from New Zealand to San Francisco in 2016, and I spent a year and a bit in San Francisco, and then worked out it's not a great place for startups. Ironically, we had massive overheads, massive costs. As an example, we were officing at a WeWork after we graduated out of Rocket Space. We were paying $5,000 a month for a 5-person office. The exact same office in Miami was just over $3,000. So we looked at a number of locations across the country. Miami was kind of like a wild card, but we visited there, and I just got a feeling, and this is in 2017, I got the feeling that the technology scene was on the up and up. So on the Thursday night, landed in Miami. Friday, secured an office. Saturday, bought a car. Sunday, locked in an apartment. And then we went back to San Francisco, wound everything down and moved the whole team. Wow. So we saved 40% on costs across the board. I mean, San Francisco was cool, but we had Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook stealing our staff all the time. They'd just headhunt them and just pay them ridiculous salaries that we couldn't compete with. So spent 3 years in Miami, and then I took a partial exit from that startup Drop It, the fan engagement platform, which has now actually become a Shopify plugin. So it's kind of pivoted because we did that during COVID when live events took a dive. And then started importing face masks in end of 2019, started 2020. And did a couple of big deals across the country, and then thought, hey, why don't we make these things in the US? My background's aircraft engineering, so I grew up around dirty old workshops and making stuff, and just always loved working with my hands. So invested in the equipment, and then a friend had just moved to this region and said, hey, if you come here, we can get you set up and get you the Walmart contract for face masks. I'm like, okay, cool. Sounds easy.
Check.
So ordered the equipment, sent it here, and then had 2 minor problems. One, we had nowhere to set up because we needed 5,000 square feet for a year. And number 2, the Walmart deal never happened. So to solve the first problem, I basically harassed all the local realtors. And the best I could find at the time was 20,000 feet for 5 years. And so there's a gentleman by the name of Bill Stribling. He's got a 280,000 square foot warehouse out by a Sam's Club in Rogers. And he let us build a 2,000 square foot micro assembly plant in the middle of it. And that was literally me and the father-in-law ground the concrete. I epoxied for 6 hours straight, which is like rolling chewing gum. It was like 100 degrees outside. The warehouse was not well insulated.
So you're feeling really good
I
too.
lost a few pounds.
So it was like 108 degrees inside.
Yeah, and we couldn't get any respirators because nothing was available. We're using paper masks.
A few less brain cells. I think.
Yeah, it was a happy. We had happy faces that day. So we did that, and then we dropped the ceiling down and put a PVC curtain around, and basically built a clean room. I mean, you could literally eat off that floor. And then people saw what we'd done and just asked if they could share the space. So that was the genesis of the whole business. But we never intended to be in this business. We're not property people. We don't have a background in commercial property. But we just saw a solution to a problem that we had, and a lot of other people had the same problem. So we weren't constrained by the dogma of the industry. We just came outside, solved the problem. And then the funny thing is, a lot of these property guys see it and go, "Oh, why didn't I think of that?" That's such a simple idea.
That's great. And then you pivoted. You pivoted towards this and began to raise local investment and got kind of the momentum towards the current model.
Yeah. So we pivoted, put a model together, and then raised some venture capital from some local investors like Jeff.
It's amazing what beers and bourbon will do, right?
Exactly.
And a good accent, right? It's like, this guy, I just want to hang out with this guy. He's so cool.
One of our early investors and really believed in us from the start, so I really appreciate
absolutely. That. Glad to be with you.
And we had Revolution, the Rise of the Rest fund came in. And then we got a few other local angels and RZC Investments. So that's the investment vehicle for Tom and Stuart Walton. So we've been very lucky in this area. Northwest Arkansas has been very good to us, and we want to do what we can to support the growth here and sort of help to maintain that momentum.
2022 and 2023 have been really a challenging year for construction. How have you managed to kind of pound your way through all of that with shortage of skilled trades? And talk about that a little bit.
Just brute force. It has been a challenge, and I think this area in particular is probably more challenging than most, from what I understand, because there's so much demand here. There's so much construction. There's multifamily, there's warehouse projects, there's a lot of commercial stuff. There's the Walmarts, home office, and it's soaking. All of those projects are soaking up a lot of talent and a lot of materials. So we're seeing increases in material prices. It kind of calmed down after COVID, and I think things stabilized, but I think the demand around here has driven them up again.
Right.
And it's really just been a challenge, and we've had to stay on top of it. Like, we've had people turn up that say they're qualified, but they're just not.
Right.
So, people just strap a tool belt on and say they're a carpenter.
Right.
When they're really not. So, a big challenge is to sort of cut through and figure
Start
out.
a new game show.
Yeah.
They've got on their resume, religious viewer of home improvement.
Yeah. Not to Toolman Taylor. It has been a challenge, but it's just been something that we've just had to push on and find solutions. And I've even had to do some stuff myself to keep the wheels moving. I had to paint the kitchen, and I've got to paint some tables tonight.
We've got some experience, rolling bubblegum.
Yeah. I've rolled the bubblegum on the floor. So
that is an advantage of being scrappy in this business. So of being able to do some of it yourself, if you can't find the help, things don't have to slow down because you can jump in and do it.
Yeah. I think it's part of the culture from New Zealand. We've got like a number 8 wire culture, which means you can kind of fix anything with a piece of fencing wire. And I think the origins of that was that we were so isolated from the rest of the world.
Yeah.
If your tractor broke down, you couldn't wait 3 months for parts to come from England because your crop's gone.
Right.
And so, we just had to find a way. And I think it's part of the culture.
Yeah.
We're always just kind of trying to find a way through just to get the job done.
And so you mentioned kind of some of those unexpected successes early on with capacity kind of meeting expectation or beating expectation. What have been since opening the doors? What have been some other unexpected things that have taken place, good or bad?
Yeah, probably like the number of large companies expressing interest in the space. We initially thought it would be all kind of small companies, startups, companies, like I said before, graduate from working from home, but we're getting we're getting national and global brands looking for a small footprint, looking for space. So that's been really interesting. But also the different uses, like I touched on some of them earlier, but like we've got a coffee company in here that sells coffee machines, and they service like all the Starbucks machines in the region. So they put a bunch of extra power in their unit. We did some customization for them. We didn't expect that at all.
And they're doing servicing and repair, like tier 1?
Servicing and repair, yes. So
very cool.
So if a machine breaks down, they can't fix it on site, they'll bring it here and fix it.
That's cool.
We've put in some cold storage too. So we've got champagne getting shipped in a week.
Really? Where?
Interesting.
Yeah, so and that was like Don's cold storage helped us out to sort of get that moving.
Yeah, very cool.
Just an example of local folks kind of getting in behind what we're doing. So like I said, it's really a platform. I kind of see us as the picks and shovels of a gold rush.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And do you see with some of the larger brands, the big brands that you didn't anticipate, do you see that they're actually wanting to have folks here and operate some sort of, have some sort of presence? Because, I've seen just proximity at the ledger, there being some larger brands, but you walk past the doors, the lights are always off. And so I'm interested, if that interest comes with folks actually being, boots on the ground.
No, they actually want us to help them out with that piece. So, we're in final stages of negotiations with a large bicycle company, and they want to take a fair chunk of space to use for e-commerce fulfillment. And so they've actually asked us if we can assemble bikes for them as well.
Wow.
That was another unexpected.
Wow, really?
So that's a whole long tail part of a service line that you could add that you probably hadn't anticipated, right?
Yeah, so this is like, for us, from a business operations perspective, it's dollars outside square feet. So, there's a lot of opportunity for us as a business to provide services. For the members, it's to be low cost relative to getting a full-time employee. But for us, it's also good revenue because, we're not just renting space, we can provide a service inside the space. And that's another part of our business model as well that we haven't really kind of touched on, and we haven't modeled it out, but we think there's an opportunity from a technology standpoint to offer enterprise grade tools to small companies that wouldn't otherwise get access to them, like for warehouse management, pick and pack, returns management, all this kind of thing. So I ran the engineering team in my last startup, so I've got a fair bit of personal experience with building applications from the ground up. So part of what we want to do is really build out that capability in-house and create solutions that add value for the members, but also create extra revenue for us.
A tech stack, some of which you might create yourself, some of which would be third party.
Yeah, we might start by sort of cobbling together a bunch of APIs to create a solution that works for us, and then over time build out our own solution. But technology changes so quickly.
Right.
There's so many tools out there that you can get access to without having to build everything from the ground up. But for us, it's all about, my experience with software, it's all about the UX, the user experience. You've got to make sure it actually provides value for the business, for whichever business is using it. So, while we can cobble together a bunch of different platforms, just making sure we've got the relevant pieces to make it easy to use, and for the members to get value at a reasonable cost.
That makes sense.
What do you want listeners and viewers to know about Loloft that maybe isn't just something that most everybody would take away? industrial co-working warehouse office space? What's something beyond that that wouldn't initially just resonate with someone right away that you want viewers and listeners out there to know?
Our favorite color is green.
We gathered that.
We have a little monster mascot.
It looks a little bit like kiwi green too. Am I right? I think I'm right.
Yeah, that little mascot. We just did a rebrand a few months ago, and the little mascot, we've got him doing a number of different things, like helping people out, and we've got a bunch of faces. We've actually got people that just want the faces put on a hat.
It's cute.
So we spent a fair bit of time on that. So.
Does he have a name?
Monster.
Monster.
Yeah. Monster's called Monster. What's something interesting that outside of the sort of basics? I mean, probably where we're positioning ourselves. So you won't find Loloft in traditional industrial areas. We're not really super interested in those spaces. We really want to be in the middle of everything, built up urban areas where there's amenities, where people live. So it's easy to get to. And also if people decide to come and, join us as members, they can nip out for lunch. Have some nice options so they're not stuck out in a grubby old industrial area on the outskirts of town. So we're really kind of positioning ourselves as last mile delivery micro hubs.
That makes sense.
So like this location here, I mean, this warehouse probably shouldn't be here. It's kind of right in the middle of downtown Rogers.
Yeah, I mean, you've got good eating less than a mile down the road.
Yeah, I mean, like Onyx is a 10-minute walk from
Right.
here. We've got plenty of other restaurants and cafes just a stone's throw.
Yeah.
So, we're really targeting these types of locations. So I suppose the key message is, if you come into Loloft, you'll be near things. You won't be isolated in a traditional industrial park.
One of the ways we typically wind things up, we asked you this question before, and I'm going to change it up a little bit. It's if you had the time machine, you go back to when you're younger. I'm not going to have you go all the way back to where you were when you were way younger. If you knew then what you know now, at the beginning of Loloft, when you first had the concept for it, what would you have done differently based on that accumulated knowledge over just the last couple of years?
What would I have done differently? Probably, it's actually a really tough one. Yeah, I mean, because we've had some challenges along the way, but those challenges have kind of brought us to where we are right now. And back when I lived in Australia for a few years. It's kind of like a dirty word for Kiwis. I was in a band over there, and I wrote a lot of songs. Just a portion of life that I really kind of got into music, and I've always enjoyed music. And I wrote this lyric. It's funny how every turn leads you to where you are right now. So, as I mentioned before, Jeff, we've got like a substantial investment offer on the table,
right,
with a partner who can really help us grow,
right.
And it's one of those things, I'm not sure, if you change things, if we'd still have those things on the table, or if we'd have better things. So it's really a tough one to answer.
So the winding road you went on, it sounds like you're a believer in destiny, right? The winding road you went on was intended, and it's led you to exactly the place you needed to be. Is that fair?
I think this is exactly where we need to be right now.
Yeah.
Sometimes I kind of think, oh man, it'd be more fun to be further ahead. But sometimes if you go too fast, you haven't built your foundation, the wheels can come off.
Yeah.
And you can, especially with a startup, startups are notorious for just throwing money at problems.
Yep.
And kind of, they're like little green Band-Aids with Benjamin Franklin's face on them.
Yeah.
I think, I'm kind of happy with where we are, even
That's
though
good.
We could have been a little further ahead. I think we've got a solid foundation. We've got a really solid team who's been with us through the early challenges, and we're really kind of battle hardened and ready to go. We're ready to go fast now.
You need some of those scars to be durable and resilient. It just makes you better.
I kind of think you do.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. If it was all easy, and then when you come against problems, it's going to be tougher, especially if you're moving quickly, you're at scale. You got a lot more responsibility and a lot more people to sort of answer to. And I just imagine that if you don't have the basics down, trying to deal with big challenges if you haven't dealt with smaller ones mightn't be that easy.
Yeah.
It's not as rewarding when you win too.
Absolutely. Feels a whole lot better after you've had a couple of shots to the head. You win some.
Knocked down
Makes
a
it
couple
worth
of
it.
times.
Exactly. Where can our audience find out more about Loloft? What's the best way for them to connect?
So if they just go to loloft.com, they can fill out a form there and connect with us. If you want space in the downtown Rogers location, we've got space available. But also, if you're interested in space in other locations, we've got wait lists we're building for the other regions that we're going into. And also, we're open to suggestion. Also, if people say, "Hey, we want a Loloft here," then we can look into the market and see if we think it's actually worthwhile, and if we can provide the service and the value. And then we'll seriously consider locations that we hadn't necessarily thought of.
Awesome. Congrats on all your success. It's been
Thank
fun.
you.
It's been fun to watch you get to this point.
Thanks, man. And appreciate the support.
Absolutely.
Yours personally, Jeff, and Startup Junkie. You guys are, you're real advocates for the ecosystem here. And, you guys are like right in the middle of everything, which is great.
You stay busy.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, we
Thanks,
appreciate
Brendan.
it. Thanks for having us. Now we need you to sing that song to play us out.
That's right.
I'll send it to you.
Don't want me to.
Yeah, send it to us and we'll dub it in there and play
Hey,
it out.
if you got anything we need to put on the soundtrack, give us some steps.
I'll send it through.
Do it. Ecosystem builders, entrepreneurs, chambers of commerce, mayors. If you're interested in taking your economic future into your own hands, we've got a book that can help you. Creating Startup Junkies, Building Sustainable Venture Ecosystems in Unexpected Places is the guide. It's a little bit inspiration. It's a little bit toolkit. What it will allow you to do is take your economic future into your own hands and build a sustainable small business, innovation, and entrepreneurial ecosystem in your backyard. If you'd like to hear more, check out creatingstartupjunkies.com. The Startup Junkie podcast reaches over 100 countries and has had over 100,000 downloads. If you're interested in reaching some of the most motivated and engaged innovators and entrepreneurs on a worldwide basis, give us a shout.